Our group wanted to explore the ways in which academic subjects taught in school and a student's life outside of school interact with one another. Only through the inquiry process did we come to realize that what we were trying to find was third space. What is third space? How is it implemented in the classroom? What methods can be used to create this space? How do we assess third space? This documentary follows our efforts to answer these questions. You will find, just as we did, that more often than not, the search for answers only leads to greater questions. Thank you for joining us on our road to finding the third space.
So, we're going on the Tonight Show on Wednesday, and we need to have a documentary for Jay.
That sounds fantastic.
What are we going to do for this documentary? Any ideas?
What about what is that called? The third space?
Third space.
Was that? Yeah, they were talking about in class.
Oh, yeah!
Oh, so you remember what third space is? Because I don't know what third space is.
All I remember is reading a really long, boring article on third space.
Oh,
I didn't read that.
It wasn't boring, it was just long.
That was a terrible article.
It wasn't terrible. We just
Gave me nightmares.
No, it was pretty terrible.
Well, I mean, if it's terrible and it's tough, we should probably tackle it because we don't have a lot of time. Since we did learn about third space in our class, we should probably know a little bit about it.
That's right.
What do you think about it, Michael?
I really have no clue anything about it except that it could be between the second and fourth space.
I think that third space is taking academics like school and making it connect to real life. Real life. That's my idea. That's what I got.
But that's only two things. Where's the third thing? It's the third space, so.
But the connection's the space.
What about if third space is a different idea about what education really is? That maybe the third space is that type of education that we don't always talk about. And education, isn't just college and school, that other people are educated. Like Ray Kroc was educated on how to make a hamburger. McDonald's. Or Michael Jordan was educated on how to make people miss and how to make baskets. Could that be third space?
You kind of lost me. I think we should just look it up.
Sure.
All right, well, let's use some technology.
Okay.
I'll use my laptop.
Okay.
Okay, I found the definition for space. A continuous area or expanse that is free and available.
Ooh, I like that free and
That's
available
deep.
part.
But we're specifically looking at it in an educational environment. What if I look it up as third space in
The classroom.
education? I've got it here. A third space is a term used in the conception of a community building. Nope, that's not right either. Well, I think we might need to do a little more research on this.
Yeah.
Philip, what do you think that third space is, being that you're, educated in another country?
I think third space has to do with the universe.
Come here. Come join us in our little
Over here. We're getting multicultural.
I think third space has to do with we have the first dimension, the second dimension, and then the third dimension, and that's what we don't see, but it's out there, obviously expanding, and whether you call it God or universe or whatever it is, I think that is the third space.
That's not bad. Well, maybe if we all put our heads together and we use our spidey sense, maybe we can come up with what.
Because obviously technology didn't give us the answer.
No, so let's try to use our spidey sense. You ready? I got nothing. Philip?
No.
I'm lost. I don't know what you're going to do for the Jay Leno show because we're quite lost. We don't even know what the definition of the meaning of third space is, so it's pretty bad.
I think we have to go to the source.
Or we could wing it.
No, let's not wing it.
On national
That's
TV,
not gonna give us a
we're going to
plus.
wing it on national
That's
TV.
We're not going to wing it on national TV. Let's go to the source.
This
The source.
Spider-Man.
All right, Mike. We are about to seek the only person who can unlock this third space. I think we'll go this way.
I think he's in here.
I think we found his lair.
Let's go in and see.
Chad, where's his lair?
It's back here.
It's back there. It's back here.
Spider-Man! Spider-Man, we need your help! Spider-Man! Spider-Man! Spider-Man!
Thank goodness we found
Woo!
Spider-Man,
That was close.
we're having trouble. We need to find out what third space is. Do you know what third space is? What is it?
Third space is around the Earth.
It's around the Earth? Where else can I find third space? Tell me else what else is third space?
Third space is where it holds the moon.
It holds the moon, and can you bring third space into a classroom?
No.
No? Do you think it would be hard to bring third space into a classroom?
Yeah, because it keeps growing and growing and growing.
Can you show us who Spider-Man really is?
Yeah.
Can you take off your mask?
Oh my goodness.
What's your name?
Mike and Spider-Man.
Mike and Spider-Man? And is third space something, Mike, that you think it would even be hard for Spider-Man to understand?
No.
No?
I've seen it before.
You've seen it before? What about people that aren't Spider-Man? Do you think regular people, it's hard for them to understand third space?
Well, astronauts know.
But that's about it. I mean, there's not very many of them.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Spider-Man. Okay,
Mike
how old are you?
and 5.5.
Okay, and do you know what third space is?
Yes.
What is it?
It's something on top of the Earth.
Okay, do you think you understand third space better than I do?
Yeah.
Absolutely, no doubt.
Yes.
What's my name?
Chad.
That's right, and you understand third space better than I do.
Yes.
How old am I?
26.
That's right, and where do I go to school? Where your mom works?
ISU.
That's right. Hey, buddy, you know Spider-Man?
Yes.
Does he know what third space is?
Yes.
You two are probably the only two people that know what it is, huh? Why? You're pretty cool with those sunglasses.
Yeah, because Spider-Man and me are brothers.
Really? Cool. Do you like to use your Spidey sense?
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy.
With our spidey senses leading the way, our group set off to tackle our first question. What is third space? With the help of some very patient educators, we uncovered some surprising barriers to implementing third space.
Hello, I'm Chad. What's your name?
I'm Jill Thomas.
And what is your job here at There's Her Lovely Family? At Illinois State.
I am the education coordinator for the geography education and earth and space science education programs.
Now, we're doing a project on implementing a third space in the classroom. Do you have any idea what a third space in the classroom is?
No, I have absolutely no idea.
If you had to guess what a third space in the classroom is, what would you think it is?
Actually, probably like setting aside physical space in a classroom for students to work in groups.
Now, I know what third space is, but I've learned a lot from your classes, Jill, and we learn best by figuring things out on our own. So maybe let's turn to technology, and let's see if you can come up with your own definition of what third space is.
If I look it up, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
How are you coming there, Jill?
Oh, I found it actually.
Oh, excellent.
And makes sense. I understand it.
What's your understanding of what third space is now after you've read and we've talked to you a little bit about it?
Well, it's not a physical space in the classroom set aside. It's actually a combination of home and school using technology.
Yeah, to kind of blend together to make this, to bring the current culture into the classroom.
Right.
Do you think it would take a lot of work to put third space into the classroom?
Good question. I don't know. I think I'd have to research it a little bit more, but it sounds like it's common sense stuff.
Now, you're a professor at ISU.
Yes.
And you're in charge of all the ed majors for the geography and social studies department?
And science earth science, yes.
And in all of your training and teaching, you haven't run into any training about implementing third space?
Absolutely not.
So even though it's kind of an older idea, it isn't really being taught to the people that educate our educators right now?
No.
And you think it's something that here at ISU we should start to implement more?
We could, yeah.
Well, thank you, Jill. I'm here with Dr. Meyer at Illinois State University. And which department are you in, Dr. Meyer?
I'm in the School of Teaching and Learning.
Awesome. And what classes do you teach?
I teach 216, which is secondary methods, and the intro to high school teaching class, 212.
Oh, I had her class, which was pretty awesome. Anyways, so what I'm here to talk to you about today is this abstract thought that we learned about, or idea or theory, developed in 1994 called creating a third space in the classroom.
Okay.
And so, kind of, is this something that was part of your curriculum in learning how to teach teachers? Or I know that you also taught high school in any of your classes where you kind of taught about third space or creating a third space?
Yeah, so no, I have never heard of such a thing until you came to my office 2 minutes ago and sat down and told me about it. So when I went through my doctoral program, where I suppose I was being taught how to teach teachers, it was all science education, and I never heard that terminology used. Maybe some of our conversations, that's really what we were talking about, but that phrase itself I've never heard before.
Very cool. And then we kind of talked about third space a little bit, and do you think that, from what we talked about, do you think it's something that would be difficult to implement in the classroom without proper training?
Yeah.
I do too.
So I think so for sure. So the way that you just described how it falls off after elementary school, when I think about my experience teaching high school, absolutely. We become so focused on the subject matter. So in my chemistry classroom, I'm so focused on maybe contextualizing that content in this is how this chemistry plays out in your body or in your life or in stuff. Maybe in that sense it gets contextualized, but I didn't and my colleagues didn't bring in students' cultural contexts into the classroom and try to, marry that with technologies or anything like that.
Oh, very cool. Do you think that it's something that would be worthwhile to bring into the classroom? Do you think it would help students learn?
Yeah, but then I think it's probably not so one-to-one. If all my assessments of student learning are very traditional, like I'm just looking at how do you understand some vocabulary, how do you understand some concept in this very lower order thinking sort of way, well then, yeah, it might be valuable to my students, but if I don't change the way I evaluate my students, then it's gonna look like it didn't matter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally understand. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your insight and
Thank you for
your
broadening
time.
my horizons, Chad.
You're welcome. This is what I do.
Bring down the house. We came here to turn the party out. Say, come on, let's raise the roof and get the roof.
Hey, it's Tuesday night, and welcome to the Jay Leno Show live from Los Angeles, California. We have an interesting, diverse group of people today from the Illinois State University that have done an exciting documentary film on the third space. Frankly, I have no idea what that is, but we're going to find out all about that tonight. And then I got a whole bunch of other interesting characters lined up for you tonight, so it should be a great show. So with that, I'd like to welcome the The Illinois State Third Dimension team, please come on in.
Hey, Jay, thanks for having us, man.
Nice to see you. Welcome. Hey, nice to meet you. How are you? Jay, fine. Nice to meet you. So,
That's a
tell me,
graceful entrance, Chad.
California is quite a difference from Illinois. How you feel? How are you liking it?
I love it here, Jay. I love it.
I can see.
This is my kind of town.
Interesting attire you're wearing.
Well, just playing a little golf and then having a little fun.
What happened to your knee?
Jay, frankly, I don't remember.
Okay. That's great. So, guys, tell me a little bit about this interesting documentary that's coming out next week. Frankly, I have to tell you, when I heard about this third space, I was intrigued.
Jay, I hate to interrupt you, but I've been watching you since I was a tyke.
Okay.
I gotta know.
Know what?
What's in the cup?
Oh, the cup is coffee.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Oh, geez,
it's
I
coffee.
thought it might be, some weird.
No, there's no booze in it. If
No,
that's
I thought maybe a juice or something.
No, it's just coffee.
Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem.
I've been wondering that since I was 2 years old.
Okay, well, now we have the answer. So, let's get back to this exciting documentary. Frankly, I was intrigued. That's why I invited you guys to come here and share a little bit more about this. What exactly is third space, and why did you decide to do this?
Well,
If
Jay,
you start, Rachel, please.
third space is the idea of taking academics that, of course, is in the standardized school system, and the actual events of a student's life, what they encounter every day, and merging the two. Not just drawing connections. I'm sure many of us can think back to a time where we learned something in a classroom and said, oh, I can use that in real life. But it's the idea of bringing the two together into one space, hence the third space.
Okay. Okay, that sounds all very intriguing, but why don't you elaborate a little bit on that? What does that mean in practice? And how is this being implemented in the school system?
To put this into practice, it's basically you bring in aspects of the student's life, as well as, again, taking academic views and trying to combine it and try to use it to help them get a better understanding for some content. And for a good example, more or less, would be if you look at the K through 5 grade level system. They do this a lot in there, probably without realizing it. They teach the kids what they're going to do in life. They give them lessons like how to count, how to some social sort of things. Stuff that's not so much content related, but things that you actually are going to be using every single day of your life, and that is, again, not academic really.
Interesting.
This idea of understanding the world that's currently around you. I think that kind of sums it up.
Very interesting. And is this something new, or is this being implemented in higher education, or what has your research found?
It's not exactly new. It was developed officially in 1994. And what we have really found is that it's not really being implemented in the higher education. Primarily, definitely not in college, for the most part. One of the things that we found, for a reason why that could possibly would be, is because when you streamline a classroom and you have one teacher that teaches the whole class today, it's very easy to get students to buy into a third space because they're with this teacher, they're in the same classroom, they're in the same environment. But once as you get into the higher levels and you're switching classrooms all the time, unless every teacher in every content area has created a third space, there's inconsistency, and so it's not as effective.
Interesting. And what prompted you to choose this as a documentary? It's kind of out in left field. I mean, what shows you to do a documentary on this subject?
Well, Jay, I don't really know. You have to talk to Rachel about that. She's the boss.
Okay, Rachel, why don't you enlighten us?
One of the reasons we chose third space, we actually started with a completely different idea, the idea of bringing abstract concepts into the classroom and incorporating those in life. And we found that a lot of our questions didn't really pertain to that. They pertain more to this idea of third space. And none of us were really familiar with it. And I feel personally that's the best place to start with an inquiry. And You really have to establish that foundation, a uniform foundation amongst the group itself, and then build further inquiry in our different sectors of knowledge.
I mean, when we started this project, Jay, we understood third space about as well as you did.
Yeah, which, to be perfectly honest with you, this is why I knew nothing about
Yeah,
third space.
and neither did we.
I thought it was some,
And we wanted to do
sort
something.
of dimension that you can't see.
Exactly. You know, I mean, we had no idea. I mean, we had to go and seek out the help of Spider-Man.
I see. And let me ask you, what did you actually learn in that process? Whether it's through this documentary or whatever your facts taught you, what can you share with us?
One of the things that I learned personally along this path is that when I first started, I thought third space was just about bringing in new technology into the classroom. But what I've really learned is that it's about bringing the actual culture in which you're teaching into the classroom and molding cultural language, cultural technology with educational technology and educational language to bring them together so that students better understand whatever it is you're teaching in whatever content area that you've chosen. And I think the other really big thing that I learned is that how much higher education professors and educators think that this could really help their students, but they don't have the training or the education on how to implement it right now.
That's very interesting. Michael, can you tell me more about how would you do this in an environment where obviously it's very culturally diverse? I mean, today in universities you have people from India, from China, from Japan, which are obviously culturally different than the students from the US. So how would you implement something like this in a situation where you have a very diverse culture?
It's a great question, Jay.
Well, the way I would look at it, because I'm specialized in geography and history, at least the way I would look at trying to do this, would be as you go throughout history, you're going to be looking at different cultures and such. And with a diverse cultural classroom, it's the perfect opportunity to start looking into, say, some of the students' cultural background, maybe have them bring in, talk with them to see what kind of cultural things that you could use in the classroom to help relate this.
Interesting. And then merge those things in this sort of interactive environment.
Yes.
Is that the idea?
But it does raise.
I think your buddy here. Oh, okay, just checking. I guess you had a hard night out in Hollywood last night.
You're meditating.
Okay.
Also that too.
I understand. Okay.
But that does raise a very good question in terms of it's much easier when everybody in your classroom is 5 years old.
Correct.
And doesn't have a baseline and culturally. Obviously there is some background that comes with any student. But I found it interesting that I would love to see another documentary that would explore the idea of if it's easier to incorporate third space on an individualistic basis. Does homeschool create better third space? Do different cultures implement it better just on the basis of the school system in place? Things like that I feel would be interesting to explore.
Very interesting. When you did this documentary, you were primarily looking at here in America, obviously not outside.
Yeah, we were more looking at third space as an abstract idea, right?
Okay.
That is something that not a lot of people know about.
Understood.
We wanted to find out where the baseline was for this right now, educationally,
Okay.
in the Midwest of the United States, specifically in the Illinois, Bloomington area.
Over the course of working on this project, learning about third space, I feel like I've learned a great deal from the interviews and from the research, looking at how it's used in the classroom and how you can use it in the classroom. Specifically looking at some of the interviews that we had, how they're talking about how it's largely being used with the lower grade levels, and to be honest, I don't think a lot of us really realize it until you would think about it. But what I've really been thinking about recently with third space is how to implement it into a junior high and a high school setting, since it's much more difficult to do so, since you only see a certain kid within the class, or just the class in general, a few times during the week, only for about an hour period. So it's much harder to kind of build up an area where third space can be used effectively. More importantly though, I kind of worry about how certain districts or schools have certain requirements with curriculum and what you can and can't teach, and how that could affect how you would use third space in the classroom. So, and it of course varies from location to location, but and especially nowadays with trying to teach or having us teach from Usually they'll have us teach from the book or teach to the test sort of situation, which we're trying to get away from, but it may be some time before that actually happens. So it's definitely kind of interesting to think about trying to implement this third space into that sort of setting where you might have a lot of obstacles, or you could have some things that might help. It just all depends on the location, what you can and can't teach, and how you can teach. So that's what I've learned from this project, and it's definitely given me a lot to think about, and I feel it's a very important thing because it's planning for the future. So
Third space. When I started this documentary, I didn't know anything about third space. Throughout the duration of this documentary, I've learned just enough about third space to know that I really don't know anything about third space. But that doesn't mean I haven't wasted my time. What I've learned about third space is that it's very difficult, especially in an upper level classroom, to blend the culture that you're teaching in, the technology of the modern era, as well as your content area, and create this new space. It's even more difficult to then create assessments that accurately assess if this is helping your students. Overall, I've learned that third space is probably extremely important, that there's a lot more research that we need to do, and there's definitely a lot more instruction that needs to happen before this can really benefit students in today. We've really just barely touched the surface of what third space can do, and I can honestly say I understand very little about third space, but much more so than when I started this documentary.